Hello and good morning. Welcome to the Genesis Legal Group's presentation of our co-parenting back to school seminar. We're so excited you all can be with us. And just for some preliminary matters, I'd like to welcome you all. My name is Sabrina Cronin, and I'm here with my group of amazing members of our firm. We have Alicia to my right, and we have Ariana to my left, and well behind us is Kim Cochran, another attorney here with us. And we have so many of you joining us all over our great country, and from Arizona, our sister law firm as well. And we're so excited you all can be here. And just to remind everyone that we are not giving any legal advice today. We are simply trying to help you along your co-parenting journey. And with that being said, we just want to allow you to have a safe space to ask your questions. And I'd like you to feel free to ask as we go along in this presentation. Feel free to write in the chat, or if you'd like to verbally ask your question, raise your hand and we'll have Alicia ask the question for you if you'd like, or if you'd like to verbally ask yourself the question, you're welcome to, and we're happy to respond. But just keep in mind, if it's a specific legal question you're looking for, we are very happy to offer you a complimentary consultation. If you are wanting that, we're very, very happy and welcoming that. If you'd like, feel free to email us and we'll set up that complimentary consultation for all of the attendees today. And that's one of the perks for attending live. Also, please keep in mind that as a safe space for all of you, we're not really here to judge any of you, and we hope you don't judge yourselves. And we just ask that you keep the questions confidential. And if any names are showing or appearing in the Zoom, we ask that you really just keep that to yourself. And if you all agree on some of these just preliminary terms, please write in your chat right now that you agree and that you can hear us, and that we are visible and audible to all of you. And if you're having any difficulties hearing us, please also put that in there as well. But if you can all put in the chat that you agree and that you are happy to be here, we're happy to have you. So, oh, good. So we have a couple of those agreeing, and if you all can write that, we'd really appreciate it, because we know we have a lot more attendees than those that have agreed. So, oh, good. Yes, agreed. Awesome. Okay. So with that being said, welcome, and we are back to school. By now, almost every school in across the country is back in session. And with that, there are certain challenges that are really brought upon with co-parenting and scheduling, extracurricular activities. And we really hope that we can help you avoid certain difficulties and certain tensions in your family and with your children with some of this presentation today. And again, please feel free to ask questions along the way. I don't want to wait till the end to answer any of your questions. And this will probably most likely be about an hour. So with that, we're ready to begin. That's me. So we are here. It's our course description. We're just kind of having a little fun with the outline and the presentation just being really analogous to school, and school's in session. So we are really hoping to help you along your journey. So get your pens and pencils out, any notebooks, take some notes. So again, having a little bit of fun with this, our course outline. So we broke it down into certain areas that most parents find difficulty with. And we did have a lot of questions about child support and where does that go and where does the money go. But I think a lot of times those things can be resolved amicably if two people are mature and want to discuss it between themselves in terms of how the money is spent. But before we get to that, I really just want to touch briefly on what really happens during this transition from summer to school and all the activities and all the schedules and how everything is ramped up a bit. It's really about support and routines, managing stress, and really being involved with your children. Your support is crucial to the well-being of your children. And if you cannot get that mutual support from the other parent, then you really need to do all you can to find that support within your inner circle. If you need help taking your children to and from activities, picking them up from school, and if your co-parent isn't really working with you, then you really should do everything you can in your power to help that transition, not only for yourself, but for your children. If it's to the point where they're not doing what they're supposed to do by court order, then you may want to talk to a lawyer, maybe go so far as bringing them back to court, calling them on what we call a show cause hearing for why they're not abiding by terms of an order. But you really need to make sure that you're keeping track of everything that they're not doing, that they should be doing. And then once that's all really sort of outlined for you, no pun intended, then we can help you analyze whether it's worth bringing them back to court. School time attendance is very important. So if you think the other co-parent isn't doing what they're supposed to do to get your children to school on time, if there's a lot of tardies, if their performance is down when they're with the other co-parent, if they're not attending all the things that they really need to be doing, they're not attending to homework, they're not going on their field trips. Those are really important things that need to be addressed. And you can't allow too much time to set in before you address those concerns, because we don't want to set a precedent that it's okay. And your children really need that seamlessness, they need that consistency in order to really have emotional and mental well-being for your children. Um, Also with parental, the exchange times, making sure the communication is there. Really, a lot of this, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you right now, but a lot of this is about communicating as best as you can with the other co-parent in the best way possible for you to maintain those healthy boundaries, but also make sure and ensuring your children are set up for success for the school year. And you as well as the co-parent needing to do all these things for your children. We want to set you up for success. And in order to do that, you need to either have something that you can either email them or text them, or something that will help you to verbally or somehow communicate to the other co-parent that these are the things that you really need assistance with. So we've done some research, and I know through the years of doing this work, there are a lot of statistics out there. There's a lot of studies, there are a lot of issues that really correlate a child's mental and emotional health and well-being to that of supporting and nurturing parents. And it gets a little tricky when there are two households and there are two sets of parents who may or may not have different values. So I wanted to help each of you maybe alleviate some of that anxiety you have when bringing the other child to that other parent, or if you think that they're not doing all the things that you really want to do for them. But it's helpful for you to know that, for instance, when a parent is involved with their child and in their child's education and schooling, 62.1% of children experience a higher self-esteem when their parent is involved. And studies show that one parent is really all that's needed for that to be effectuated. So I don't want you to feel concerned that if the other parent isn't pulling their weight or doing what they need to do, if you do the right thing and if you show up for your child or children, then they will have that increased self-esteem. Likewise, if you are more actively involved with your student, with your child, in their schooling, in their education, in their extracurricular activities, 95% of students report having better mental and physical well-being. their attendance is also significant when that parent or both parents are involved and really help with their studies and help them achieve better in school. It's really just about being involved, being present, being aware of what's going on with your children. Instead of being more focused on the co-parent not doing what they're supposed to do, focus on your child and be the parent who shows up for them, who's there for them with their extracurricular activities, who's there with them talking to the teachers, who helps explain to them what their schooling should be or their homework. Really being involved is really more important than being worried about what the other co-parent is doing or not doing. If you are not as involved in your child's academic success or in their academic life, for instance, 34% are more likely to drop out of school. Students with supportive parents are 81% more likely to graduate. And those who discuss education and their classes with them are 44% higher, more likely to go to postgraduate studies. Meaning after their undergraduate degrees, they are more likely to go on to professional degrees or getting their other postgraduate degrees. I think we had a question or two pop up in our chat.
Let's take a look.
Can you read it?
Yeah, can you provide a copy of the slides after the meeting?
Absolutely. The slideshow will be presented and will be sent. Alicia does an amazing job at sending to all of our attendees the slideshow and any resources, you know, that if you'd like, if we can refer to. And if you have, again, if you have a need or would like a complimentary consultation that is offered to all of our attendees here. So I know a lot of you had questions regarding the other parent, if they're not helping, if they're not cooperative. And many of you have the concern that, you know, in a two household upbringing for your children, how do you navigate those challenges? So it's really important that you know and you are aware of your child's attendance. And if you're not getting the cooperation from that other co-parent, you can take it upon yourself to call the school. You have every right to call the school. You are the legal custodian of your child. And if you're not getting answers from the other co-parent, and many of you are not, and I can completely understand the frustration. So take it upon yourself, call the school, talk to your child, understand what they're missing. If they're not doing their homework when they're at their other parents, then you talk to the child and make sure they understand and they know how important it is to get their schoolwork done. If you need to help them, maybe talk to them over the phone. Maybe you can work on their homework with them, even remotely. You know, video conferencing is a great way to help your children when you're not in their physical presence. But do your best to help them if they're struggling in school, if they're struggling with their homework, if they're struggling with classes. Sometimes it even, you know, you may even have to go so far as to hiring a tutor for them. And I know a lot of parents are frustrated if they have to do that and spend the money. But instead of being more frustrated at the other co-parent for not helping, you know, realize that you're doing what's in the best interest for your children. You may have to be the one to go that extra mile for them, but always remember it's for your children. Your motivation should always be what is in the children's best interest? What am I doing that can help elevate my children instead of worrying about what your exes or your other parent, the other co-parent is not doing. And I hope that makes sense. So,
So it
is
looks
there a
like
question?
yes, we have a question from Caitlin, and she asked, is it the same thing with special needs children? And you know, Sabrina, I don't know if you have an answer for this, but from my personal experience, I actually was certified for some time to do ABA therapy with special needs children, and I worked with special needs children for quite some time. And in my personal experience, it is absolutely true, if not more true, and more relevant and more important for special needs children to have that support. Because, they do require extra care, they do require an extra level of understanding and support that, is just gonna be so crucial for their development. So crucial.
And that's a great point, Alicia. And I'd like whoever asked that question to understand that if the other co-parent is not doing what they need to do for the best interests of your special needs child, and it gets to the point where it is such a severe degree that your child is suffering, you may need to take them back to court. You may need to let the court know that your child is suffering and not thriving when they're in the presence of that other parent. And sometimes it's very difficult to change the custodial environment, meaning change the parenting time order if it's already been in place. But you may be able to adjust it or modify it such that during the school week, they're more with you, and then they have more time on the weekends. There are things that you can do to remedy a situation so that your children do not have to suffer. That goes with special needs children or any other special needs that your children may have. So there are always creative ways to find solutions, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help you along that journey so that you don't feel frustrated and you don't feel bogged down any more than you already are. We can help with that. So, but yes, some of those statistics, they apply across the board with any type of child or any type of special needs that child or children have. And we are here to be your support. Sometimes when you're a single parent, you feel like you have no support from anywhere or anyone, and you're giving all you can and all your energy goes toward your children. I understand that very, very much, but you're not alone in this. So we're here to help, and we're here to help solve and resolve these issues for you to the best of our ability, and so that you have a successful parenting experience and raise amazingly well-adjusted children. So, we want you to be successful, just like what I was saying before, and we want your children to be successful. And that's what we're here for. We're here to not only empower you as parents, but help you to empower your children. So encourage them, support their interests, encourage their self-discovery. If you feel or think that your co-parent is not doing that, well, then ask your child or children what they need to feel encouraged, really in age appropriate ways. Ask them, what do you need from me? I want to help you. Is this an activity you're interested in? Is it not? Sometimes parents, all well intended, will have them in activities that the children don't even enjoy, only to serve the parents' need, not the child's. And so it's very important as your children grow up and as they become older and more able to speak for themselves, it's important that you listen to them, that you really hear what it is that's important for them. And, as they get older, courts really do listen to the children more and more. They have more of a voice. You can ask them questions more, aligned with their maturity level. And positive engagement really helps build that self-esteem. So if it's possible to have a co-parent that is cooperative with you, make sure the co-parent and you are on the same page and aligned in terms of what activities are good for them, what activities are beneficial. And then sometimes we get into disagreements with who's going to pay for what, who's going to bring them to what. Some parents don't like taking them to an activity that they disagree with on their parenting time. But if it's something that the child loves and is passionate about, I find it very, very rare that a court would not allow that activity, even if that parent disagrees, if it's something that that child loves. Now, paying for it is another situation and another circumstance altogether, which is something that's on a really case by case basis, and we can help you through that. But if it's something that your child loves and you are encouraging that and you are supportive of that, then make sure that child gets there. Make sure that you have arrangements and that support that is necessary to make sure that child attends and shows up, because that will help them with their self-esteem, with their self-confidence, and their overall well-being. So if that other co-parent is not in agreement with that, we can discuss how we can get the child there regardless. And sometimes it is a matter of taking them back to court to make sure that parent takes them to those activities on their parenting time, or we find alternate ways to do that.
And Sabrina, I think you pretty much covered this question, but if you wanted to elaborate on this at all, we do have a question in the chat that says, what if my co-parent won't allow my child to participate in those activities during his time?
Well, again, that activity is for the child, not the parent. Most courts in our great nation see that. Parenting time is really not for the parent, it's for the child. The child's activities are for the child. If the child loves to go, they need to be present at those activities. And what I find often is the parent that was more willing to take them to those activities, while if it was a relationship and the child was growing up in a together with the two parents and then they separated, or in any kind of arrangement, it's the parent that usually did more when they were together, that usually ends up doing more when they're separate. Unfortunately, that's just how human nature is. Sometimes that other parent who wasn't as available or wasn't as, involved, does show up and does rise. But oftentimes, if they weren't involved before, they usually aren't involved in when it becomes two households. So unfortunately, the parent who did more still continues to do more. But remember, it's for the benefit and the betterment of your child. If you truly need that extra support, we can find ways to take that other parent back to court if the evidence is there, if we have enough circumstances to warrant that extra time in court, to warrant that extra expense of going back to court, then we can certainly help you with that. But make sure you do all you can to try to get that other co-parent to assist. And if that other co-parent is just digging their heels in and not wanting to do what's in the best interest of the child, keep accurate records of it, make sure we have enough evidence to support it, and we can help you take them back to court if that's truly the path you want to take. I try to, post judgment, try to get our clients to do things a little more amicably, because the children feel that tension. And it also saves you time and money and expense and aggravation and just lots of different emotions that go through all of the post-judgment court battles. But if that doesn't work, we can certainly do all we can to get that other parent to rise. But if they're not willing to, remember, you're doing it for your children. I hope I answered that question okay. So touching upon a little bit of what we just left off on is mitigating the growing pains of your children. And actually, we're really trying to mitigate your pain of co-parenting. So while we're teaching you and helping you, empowering you as parents, we're hoping that you will do the same for your children. There are a lot of different things that your children will experience growing up, and many of them deal with behavioral changes. And there are more and more forms of bullying that we see, especially in light of all of the social media and all the online presence and all the different things that our children are facing more and more. And we find it very common for people to bully when they're hiding behind that screen and not face to face. So we have to be very careful with what our children are doing when we're not in their presence, because if they're getting exposed or if they're the ones bullying, we want to make sure we're aware of what is happening. So watch for signs. And we hear a lot from our clients that, well, how do I know what they're doing when they're with the other co-parent? So just be mindful of that and try, if you can, to express these concerns with the other co-parent. And I know it's hard when you're not in an amicable situation to have those frank conversations with the other co-parent. But do your best to try to discuss that with them, and if they're not willing to even open that door with you, just email them or text them and let them know that, hey, I'm worried about our son or our daughter. You know, I see that their grades are suffering, or I see that they're being a little more pushy. I want to make sure they're not, you know, bullying the kid down the street. Because as parents, you know, sometimes we experience our child or children hurting others because they're hurting, you know, the saying, hurt people or hurt children hurt others. And so you have to be aware as parents what your children are experiencing. And we want to be available to them. And if you think that they are going through something and the other parent isn't helping, then maybe try to get them into some sort of a therapy program, or talk to the school to see what other things they might need. Talk to family members. Maybe you can have a family member reach out to them, because sometimes kids are able to talk to other people and maybe not us as parents. They feel maybe just a little more comfortable expressing themselves to another family member or a mentor or a counselor or someone at their church or synagogue or temple. So be mindful of what your child needs, and don't take it so personally if they're not willing to open up or ready to open up to you. Just be aware of what they may be experiencing. And also know that children emulate behavior. They don't always listen to what we say, but they watch what we do. So always be mindful to be a very positive role model for them, and do your best to try to mitigate what they may or may not be experiencing from the other parent. And simply because you know they're going through things when they're at the other parent's household, like I said before, one healthy parent is enough to raise a healthy child. And if you want to instill your values and your ethics in your child for their for their growth and their adult behavior and their maturity, make sure you are exhibiting those same characteristics at home. And it's okay if they're not seeing it in the other family or the other household, as long as you are doing what you want to do and exhibiting the patterns and the behavior and the characteristics that you want your child to emulate, then they will do that. And also be mindful of their friends. Find out who they're spending time with when they're at the other parent's house. Just because you don't see them during the other parent's custody time or parenting time, doesn't mean you cannot talk with them about it or experience what they're going through. You can find out a lot from your children just by being present when you're with them, when they're with you. Sometimes they'll open up to you about certain things, you know, the old potted plant analogy. Sometimes they won't talk until they're ready, and sometimes it's just a matter of being there, being that potted plant in the room for them. You know, a lot of teenagers don't really talk or express themselves, but if they know you're there, the presence is all that matters. And then show them, exhibit the signs and exhibit the care that you know they need. And eventually they'll open up and be the role model. Like I said, be that positive role model. Make sure you're showing them who you like to be and who you are as a person, and they eventually will emulate that. So I'd like to answer some of our questions that we had pre-seminar, and a lot of them did have to do with school-related expenses and child support. So I will get to the whole child support issue. Child support is really for the basic needs of a child. Most courts across the country believe that child support is for the health, the education, the the clothing, the food, the shelter, the basic needs of our children. Now, that being said, education and school obviously are one and the same. It's very important for parents prior to that judgment being entered to agree on what school-related expenses mean. Does that mean books? Does that mean private schooling? Usually not. Usually child support does not go to private education. Usually it doesn't go to books. Usually it doesn't go to hot lunches at school. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but the parents have to agree. If they have attorneys, it's much easier to agree on these things and what is covered in child support. Sometimes there's only so much money to go around. Sometimes there is extra money that the parents can agree to split extracurricular activities. Sometimes it takes a separate agreement to talk about, okay, who's gonna pay for the extracurricular activities? Some parents don't want to pay extra for hot lunches because they feel their child support should cover that. So a lot of it depends on the individual parents, the individual income of the parents, and what they've agreed to. So my recommendation, and I know that most attorneys would agree, that it's always best to discuss what is covered, because you don't want to assume certain things, because when you assume, then you will be very disappointed in the end to find out that child support does or does not cover books, or does or does not cover hot lunches, or does or does not cover a cell phone or an iPad or the computer that's necessary. So make sure you discuss this. Sometimes it does or does not cover your uniforms if they're going to a private school, or certain field trips, or club fees, or equipment. Try to share the expenses in the pro rata, percentage that is amenable to you based upon the income disparities. Try to discuss these things with your attorney. If those things were not discussed pre-judgment, do your best to try to amicably resolve that with your co-parent post-judgment. If you cannot amicably resolve that, then you may need to hire a lawyer to help. Now, I know that's not always the best circumstance, especially if you cannot afford it. But if you cannot agree with the other co-parent on who's spending what for your son or daughter, then you really need to do what's in your son or daughter's best interest. So sometimes you have to do the extra spending, pay the extra money, just so your child feels safe and secure and has all their needs met. That means paying for that field trip, paying for the extracurricular activity that they so desperately want to be involved in. That means paying for their tuition, paying for that field trip. If you know you can afford it and it's in their best interest, then try not to fight over the petty things. Try not to let it be a tit for tat, because in the end, it's your child who will suffer if you are so determined to get back at that other parent and withholding that money, or withholding that field trip, or withholding that activity from your daughter or son. They will suffer, and the other parent won't even feel it. So make sure you are doing and only motivated by doing what's in the best interest of your child. This is, again, the theme for this entire presentation is we want to help you cultivate a positive co-parenting approach. So in order to do that, try your best to discuss things amicably with the other co-parent. If the other co-parent is completely out of reach, you cannot get along with them, it's not in your emotional best interest to even communicate with them, do your best to try to email them in a very professional way. Take out all emotion if you can. Maybe have someone read it for you so that you can really truly be objective. Maybe have a trusted friend or family member read any kind of email or text message before sending it. try to do your best at taking out all of the emotion, because we don't want to seem reactionary if the other co-parent is not involved or helping in any way. So, and I say that because, again, your children will feel everything, and we're trying to do what's in their best interest. If the other co-parent isn't sharing things that that child brings home from school, for instance, you have a week on, week off parenting time schedule, and they get a lot of handouts, and during the other parent's week on, let's just say, and you don't have access to those handouts. Well, call the school and ask the school. Sometimes you can have very friendly, parents at the school or other teachers or counselors who understand that situation. And you have every right to get whatever it is that that child, your child brings home during your non-parenting time week. So the onus is on you to learn what their grades are, what their homework is, what their involvement in school is or isn't. Even if that other co-parent isn't cooperating or isn't communicating with you. And the older your children get, the more they are able to do that, so you don't have to rely on the other co-parent. You should be able to talk directly with your child during your non-parenting time week. If they're too young and you're still not at that stage, it is my recommendation to go to the school and find out from the school directly what it is that they're doing during your non-parenting time week. Both parents, if you have joint legal custody, both parents have a right to attend all of the school functions, all of the school conferences. Sometimes if you can't get along with the other co-parent, and it's too difficult for you to attend the conferences together, then set up your own individual parent-teacher conference. Most schools allow that. And if that school doesn't, then do your best to try to attend with the other co-parent and just keep it very amicable. We never want to show our emotions in front of our children or really air our dirty laundry in front of the outside world, that they don't need to know it. They have their own issues. The more drama you bring to the situation, the more it'll ripple down and have that ripple down effect to your children. Do your very best to show up and be the classy person who doesn't need to worry about all the drama, because you don't want to expose your children to that. Because if you show that, even when your children are not around, people talk and people judge, and your children ultimately will feel that. So do your best to be the better person and rise above all of that. So my recommendation is do your best to be your best, and then your children to be their best.
And, excuse me, we do have a great question in the chat. It says, my co-parent always has other people involved in taking my daughter to activities. She even has her family and neighbors listed as emergency contacts at my daughter's school. How do I stop it?
So the emergency contacts have to be the parents, or should be the parents. You can talk to the school. If your other co-parent is not willing or cooperating with you to discuss who is on that emergency contact list before they put them on there, then you call the school yourself and say, hey, and sometimes schools want to see the actual agreement. By law, they need to see who are the two legal custodians of that child that they're educating. So make sure that both parents are on the list, and in their absence, usually each parent can pick one other person to help, either for pickups or for emergency situations. Always discuss that with the other co-parent, and like I said, if they're not willing or able or don't want to cooperate with you, then discuss it with your children. And if that, with the educators. And if that doesn't work, then you will have to find an attorney or some outside help to assist you with that. Unfortunately, some schools are not cooperative, but usually by law they have to be. So take it upon yourself. The onus is on you. The burden is on you. If the co-parent is not in alignment with you, then you need to do everything you can when it's your parenting time to make sure that only certain people can pick up those children. Depending on which jurisdiction you are in and which court, when it's on their parenting time, they may be able to have the final say with who is to pick up the children. Some courts allow that. Some courts will say it's okay for that co-parent to have this person pick up the children in their absence. So make sure you know the laws in your jurisdiction, make sure you are aware of who is on that emergency contact list. So the two parents take priority and take precedent. But from that, then it depends on your jurisdiction and what is allowed on your non-parenting time schedule.
Sabrina, the other part of that question also asked about people taking the child to activities. And I actually think that you can make a positive spin on that thing that might be bothering you. Your co-parent is actually making an effort to take your child to activities that they love. And it's a positive thing, really. And maybe it's for work reasons. Hopefully it is for work reasons, and it's not just because they don't want to be involved with that child. But it could be looked at positively in that regard. And we talked about that earlier, about how if the other parent is not willing to take the child to those activities. So if your co-parent is, that's great. And from my experience with the cases I've handled in my career, I think the kids realize eventually, and it may take years, but they do realize eventually which parent is the one that has been the one that's been involved. Who takes me to the activities? Who's always at my games? Who helps me with my homework? That child will eventually realize which parent is the more involved parent.
Yes, to that point, Kim, thank you so much for that. I always encourage the co-parents to realize just what Kim said. It is a positive when that other co-parent, they may or may not be able to or willing, but at least they're getting someone to take them there. Most courts do not favor the right of first refusal, meaning if one parent cannot do something on their parenting time, the right of first refusal goes to the other parent to take them or to be with them or to have the parenting time that night. Or sometimes it's a limited time, 4 hours or 8 hours or an overnight or 2 overnights. It really just depends, but most courts do not favor that. And they instead prefer that parent who may or may not be willing or able to do something for the child finds other resources, finds other, a babysitter or a family member or a neighbor or someone else involved to take that child to their activity. It is a positive thing when you look at it. The only negative would be if that other person involved is somehow a bad influence, somehow driving under the influence, somehow abusive. In those extreme situations, then we have to take action. Then we have to take court action. But in 99% of the cases, it's a positive when your child has more people in their lives to love them. We see a lot of situations where step parents get involved or other, boyfriends or girlfriends of the other parent. And then, our client may or may not be upset about it. We like to encourage our client to see that it's a good thing that they have more people in their lives to love them. Except in those circumstances where the situation is not a good one, whether there's abuse or any kind of addiction issues, we like to encourage our clients to see the positive, to see that there are more people in that child's life to love them, to nurture them, to be examples for them, to show good, positive, exchanges with them. So the more positive you can be in terms of their interactions with other people, the more positive your children will experience that. So it's really all in how you look at something, and don't always put a negative meaning to it because it only has the meaning you give it. And if you give it a positive meaning, your children will too. When we talk about school, sometimes we have truancy issues, obviously. But if you know your children, like we talked about before, may have behavioral issues or absentee issues, you want to nip it in the bud as soon as you learn of it. And if you could express that to the other parent, that's all the more reason to do so immediately. you need to discuss and develop an approach that the two of you can agree to together. When you are not able to do that with the co-parent, when you're not able to have an aligned vision for your child, for instance, then try with everything that you can to express the importance of it. And again, put it in writing. I always suggest putting things in writing if you can't verbally express it to the other parent. That, because over time you may need to go back to court and present your side of things to court. And when you have things in writing, it's easier to build a case, it's easier to show your side of things, it's easier to be more objective about certain things. But in the short term, if you're not getting cooperation from the parent, the other co-parent, go to the school, talk to the school, talk to the counselor, talk to your children, be as involved as you can to discuss what's really happening. Why are they acting out? Why are they not going to school? What's really behind it? Sometimes your children will not want to talk to you. So again, try to get the help that they need. Maybe they'll talk to a different person outside of the family. You know, we talked a little bit about this earlier in our seminar. Sometimes children just need to know you're there. Sometimes they want to talk to a friend or, you know, just another mentor that they feel comfortable with. But make sure they know that you are there for them, no matter what. If they're acting out, if they're yelling at you, if they're acting out or not being themselves, show them, no matter what, you love them unconditionally and you're there for them unconditionally. And over time, that approach may or may not resolve issues, but they'll know that you're there. But education is very, very important, and that stability is very important. And, you know, the frustration comes sometimes when, you know, they think that at the other parent's house, it's all fun and games. There's no structure, there's no rules, there's no discipline. And so they're acting out more when they're at that other parent's house. And you're afraid that you're gonna lose your parenting time to the other parent. But just remember, and I say this a lot, studies show repeatedly that the child does better and performs better and always returns to the household and feels safest in the household that they find structure and that there's discipline and that there's more of a steadiness and a stability to that household. It may not result in that right away. It may take a few years or many years for that return on that investment to really take hold. But rest assured that the household that has the most structure and calls the child on that behavior, calls the child on their bad performance in school, is the one that the child returns to, is the one that the child feels safest at in the long run. This again goes really more toward responsibilities, transitioning, the importance of trying to be aligned with the co-parent and discussing things mutually and amicably is really paramount. So if you cannot do that, if you cannot get with the other parent and discuss who's going to pay for the special project that they need, you know, many schools nowadays, especially in high school, if your child is in a special class or has a special project that requires more money to spend or to buy, and you have to go to Michael's and buy a bunch of stuff for this class project that they have to do. And, you know, you have a student who's in an AP course or something, and you have all this extra stuff that you have to be responsible for. If the other co-parent isn't willing to engage with you or help offset some of those costs, then do your best to meet those needs of your child. Talk to the school if it's getting to be too much of a financial burden on you. Maybe there are some special circumstances or special considerations or accommodations the educator or the school can help you with. Try to manage those projects so that your children don't feel like they're missing out. If there's a special club or something that they want to be involved in, talk to the school, talk to your child and see really what is the priority for your child and really do your best to try to make it happen. I'm not trying to tell you that you need to appeal to every single whim of your child. I don't want you to think that we want you to raise spoiled brats or anything like that, but we want you to understand really what drives your child and what really lights them up. And if it's something that is exciting to them, and if it's something that you know really will feed them, then do your best to try to accommodate that need of theirs. The other issue is with respect to school property. I know we touched on this briefly a few moments ago, but the school property is your child's. So if it's a laptop computer that your school, gives to your child during their time at that school, that goes to and from the households. If it's a laptop or if it's something that you've purchased or the other co-parent purchased, and that, let's just say the other co-parent does not allow that child to bring it to your home, you need to talk to the other co-parent and say, look, that's the property of the child. That's the property of our children. Sometimes they still don't allow it. Then you may or may not need to find the money to buy it for your child when they're with you. That's difficult when it comes to a phone or a laptop computer that they need to have with them all the time. So if there is really that huge disparity of how that property should be treated, you may need to get lawyers involved. It's really unfortunate when we see this, and we see it very often when the two parents cannot be mature adults and realize that this is the property of the children, not each other. Well, a gift is a gift, right? So if that other parent doesn't see it that way, you may need to have an attorney intervene for you.
And we do have another question in the chat. What if my child attends less school and does worse when they are with my co-parent? Can I do something to make sure she goes to school?
Yes, I think Colin asked that question.
Yes.
Thank you for that question, Colin. We touched upon this briefly, and if the behavior continues, my recommendation is to keep a journal. When you know that your child is not doing as well on their homework or their grades suffer, and you see it, you can see it during the time that they're with the other co-parent, try to keep a journal, try to express to your child the importance of going to school, of being there. If you can help them, it may take you driving over to that parent's house and getting them to school. It may take that extreme measure to do. And then if it continues, and if the other parent is just not cooperating with you, you may need to take them back to court and ask for more parenting time and get that child with you more during the school week so that you can effectuate a successful school career for your children, because that is super important, and courts agree wholeheartedly that education is paramount. And if that other parent is not doing their most to get that child to and from school or helping them with their homework, and it's an extreme situation, then taking them back to court may be necessary.
And I think, to speak a little bit more to that, with the journal, just to keep it very specific, note the date, the time, what happened, how your child felt about it, and kind of just any specifics that you can give, are better. And if and when that journal needs to be used, having those specifics is very helpful.
And try, like we said before, try to keep all emotion out of it, be very factual with it. And sometimes that's difficult because you're so busy yourself with your life and your work. If you can't, then maybe over the weekend, try to remember what happened, what transpired. But you have access, you have full access to their educational records at school. You can talk to their teachers, you can experience what their experience on the weeks that you don't have them. You could, by asking questions, by going to the school, by asking your children questions. Again, simply because you don't have them during that time period doesn't mean that you should not be involved. You can be as involved as you'd like, and that other co-parent doesn't have a right to prevent that child from calling you. Sometimes we have such severe custody battles where the time is limited that child can reach out, or that other parent can effectuate that call on their non-parenting time or vice versa. So you have to be mindful of any kind of court order, but that being said, you have every access to their school records, their school attendance, their grades, etc. And if things are failing on your non-parenting time, then you can definitely pursue something further. So I think that comes to the end of our presentation, but I do want to answer more questions. We have a few more minutes and I'm happy to take any questions that any of you have.
So I think there was a great question that we wanted to go over, that we had received prior to the seminar from one of the RSVPs, and they were wondering about school safety. So with everything going on in the country and, you know, unfortunately, school shootings taking place, this person wanted to know in particular in relation to school shootings, what do we do? How can we make our children feel comfortable? What can we do with our families? And I was hoping you'd be able to shed some light on that.
Thank you so much. Yes, this is obviously a major concern all across really the globe. And as the school incidences of active shooters and intrusions are really more increasingly prevalent, we are mindful of keeping our children safe. And it's not just keeping our children safe within our households, it's keeping our children safe everywhere they go, school being obviously a large part of that. So most schools in our country now follow ALICE, which is the alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate training program. Most schools have these training drills that the children are able to experience to help them to know what to do. But we don't want our children to be afraid to go to school. We don't want our children to feel in fear when they leave our households. So if you can discuss this with the other co-parent and try not to instill any kind of fear, but take it from a place of more trying to empower them with this knowledge. You know, I always like to say knowledge is power. And depending on how old your children are and the age appropriateness of your children, perhaps you and the co-parent can have a family meeting about it. You know, now is the great time to have it. We're in September, we're in the beginning of the school season. So if it's an issue with your children, and if they're someone who already did experience that, I know many children have, unfortunately, talk to them and let them know that the school is very well prepped, that now more than ever, the people at the schools, the teachers, the counselors, all the educators are aware of what to do in these situations. You know, the positive is that because, you know, obviously the negative aspect of it, because it was happening, the positive is that more and more people are aware of what to do. So your children should feel safer than ever now because more people are aware of what to do in these situations. And as they get older and more appropriately able to handle your comments about it or what to do in those situations, they should feel safer. And so it doesn't have to be, you know, a huge discussion. It doesn't have to be a massive, you know, event, you know, sit down, very, very formal, or it can even be something that's, you know, you can make it, you know, a little more, not lighthearted, but just not so heavy, so they don't feel that heaviness. When you when your children leave your home, you want them to feel the safetiness that your home provides and provide that love and that security and that nurturing, and then they'll be able to take that with them anywhere they go. And that's why I guess the whole theme of our discussion today is really trying to instill that love, that support, that nurturing into your children, because then they'll feel safe, then they'll feel loved and secure, even in the most hostile situations. So if you're a co-parent and you can become aligned with that value, that's great. But if that co-parent isn't really aligned with that value with you, then you do the nurturing, you do the supporting and the loving, and then your children will still feel that safetyness no matter where they go. And I think that concludes our seminar. I hope that helped. And again, if you enjoyed your participation today, please, it would help others to try to find us and offer this valuable support. Please write us a review if you'd like. It would be really helpful for us here at Genesis Legal Group to know that we helped you. If you had a positive experience, we'd love for you to share that either on Google or Yelp or Facebook. And please ask us any other questions. If you'd like to become a member of our free resources, please email us. We're happy to get you on our list. We'll invite you to all the upcoming seminars. We have these every couple of months. And if you'd like to have a free consultation, that is our gift to you, is attending our seminar today. So thank you again. And we really, really hope you have a wonderful, wonderful school year. So thank you so much. And from all of us here at Genesis Legal Group, to each and every one of you and your children, we're here for you, and we wish you a great school year.
And just for ease of access, I'm going to send in the chat the Google Yelp if you would like to leave us a review. We have one for the Arizona page and one for the Michigan page as well. So that's going to be in the chat.
Yep, leave us some thoughts, let us know what you thought of the seminar, and from everyone here in Genesis, thank you again.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.